We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact the...
I think February 1st.
Are you planning on giving notice of that?
I think we'll do it February 1st.
25% on both, sir?
Sir,
On each.
we know these tariffs are coming on February 1st. We need to match those tariffs dollar for dollar, tariff for tariff, and make sure that it hurts the Americans as much as it hurts Canadians.
What would your strategy be to work with President Trump?
Well, first and foremost, we would unfortunately and reluctantly have to retaliate against tariffs applied to our businesses. And then we would go to the grassroots American economic interests that are on our side. And that kind of pressure from the ground up will, I think, help convince President Trump to make a deal that will be both good for Canada and the United States. He is, after all, a deal maker.
President Trump signed an executive order, the U.S. government only recognizing two genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
There's personally, I am a man. I am as people say, cis man. There are people there who, they say they're
me too.
Gender neutral.
Well,
you are a man.
totally.
Yes. There are people there who say they're gender neutral. Yeah. They say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here, whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only two?
I'm only aware of two, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then you're welcome to do that. But I'm aware of two, and as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone to make their own personal decisions. That's the kind of government I'm going to run.
It looks like we have escaped it on day one, but I don't think we want to take it for granted. There's still, obviously, irritants in the relationship between Canada and the U.S., and I think this gives us an opportunity to address some of those. I just think that we have to be realistic about the fact that we're an economy 1/10 the size of the Americans, and any trade dispute that we get into, if we ratchet it up, it's just going to be more and more painful for Canada. We're going to suffer more from that than the Americans are. And why can't we avoid that altogether? I just don't think you should threaten things that you're not prepared to do. There's no chance that we will be cutting off energy exports to the U.S., so why threaten it? It doesn't make sense for us to have a Canadian tariff apply to Canadian goods with dollars going to Ottawa. So why threaten that?
Doug Ford, essentially communicated that you were working against the national interest by saying otherwise.
Well, you know what I didn't do? I didn't go out and say, let's stop selling car parts to America to get serious about the trade relationship. I didn't go out and say, let's stop selling aluminum from Quebec. And that's what I objected to. You can't pick on one particular province and one particular commodity, because I don't like the divide and conquer approach that I've seen the Prime Minister take. I don't think that that's very helpful. The table that we normally have as a group of premiers is that when we do communiques, we make sure that everybody's comfortable with what's in it. And I made it pretty clear that picking on Alberta was just not going to be the way to achieve any kind of solution.
How do you prepare? I mean, aside from making the argument that these tariffs could hurt Americans, how do you prepare for that if it were to happen?
Well, I would love to also talk with Quebec about how we might restart Energy East through their province. Would they be willing to do that? I'd like to start talking with British Columbia, how we might reactivate Northern Gateway. I mean, we have to make a choice here, and we have to understand the reason we become so dependent on the United States is that we haven't been engaging in those partnerships across the country, and I think we can do both. I think that we can continue to enhance our relationship with the United States, but then we have to have an honest conversation as Canadians about why we keep blocking each other's projects, why it is we keep on blocking some of the major projects that would allow us to sell the export products around the world that we know that the world needs. And so maybe this is a wake-up call for all of Canadians.
The only thing that Trump will understand is force and strength. We need to show that. I think we need to have dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs. So if they They hit us with tariffs. We need to respond in kind. We also need to look at escalating that if there's additional steps we can take.
It basically revolves around how far Canada should go in threatening to retaliate. Premier Smith argues that it wouldn't be logical to withhold, for example, oil exports or to apply an export tax, and so we shouldn't be threatening it if we don't actually plan to do it. Other premiers are saying you've got to keep even that on the table. Are you critical? Is that what you're saying?
We should have all tools on the table and not withdraw a tool that we could use in the negotiating table potentially prematurely. What's the benefit of withdrawing any tool? If we don't go there, we don't go there, but we need to leave all tools on the table. It seems to me that Danielle Smith is more interested in kissing up to Donald Trump and to appeasing him. She seems to be working for the wrong team.
We're so reliant on sending our stuff to the U.S., including oil, because there has not been any sort of, will at the level of the federal government for building pipelines or other ways to get this product to other markets. I mean, your party and you specifically, Mr. Singh, have opposed the building of pipelines, including TMX. Is there not some culpability there in the fact that we are so vulnerable as an export market when it comes to our energy to just the U.S.?
There's no doubt that diversification is important. We need to be able to produce more in our own country. The fact that we have got such an incredible wealth of critical minerals, but we're not actually building the batteries in our country. We're not actually refining those products with our timber as well. We log, but we don't refine or add value to the raw goods that we produce in our country. So that's serious. That's a serious concern that we have. The Liberals and Conservatives have been in power since the beginning of this country, and they've certainly failed on that front to develop a more developed economy, an economy that adds value to the raw resources that we have.
But Mr. Singh, I'm asking you about oil, right? You have been opposed to pipelines that would allow for Canada to export its oil to other places other than the United States. Was that a mistake?
I mean, I don't think that's relevant right now to the question of tariffs being imposed on Canada.
I can tell you I would never go out publicly and say we should stop selling car parts as a way of making a point to the Americans and hurt Ontario. I'd never go out and say we should stop selling aluminum to Americans as a way to make a point to hurt Quebec. And it hurt me that they felt that they could make that same argument, that Alberta should sacrifice our interests in order to try to advance some kind of trade war. I take a different approach. Let's stop fighting with each other. Let's maybe try to remove some of the internal trade barriers. Maybe my fellow premiers can stop blocking pipelines when we propose them to either the West or East Coast. And maybe this should be a moment of reckoning for us as a country, that part of the reason all of us look north-south is because for the years have made it very difficult to do business east-west. So maybe that's what we should be talking about, is each other so collectively we can sell our products to the world, whether that's to America or whether it's off the West Coast or whether it's off the East Coast. And maybe that's a far more constructive conversation to have than how do you sacrifice one province's interests in order to be able to protect the rest. And